Hello, friends. I was just sitting here getting ready for my day and I was about to write an article, but I decided that I would go ahead and use the video thing again because I'm trying to do that a little bit more. There's lots of astrology going on this week. And I think the thing that's front and center and what I want to focus on mostly is the Mercury Retrograde that just started yesterday in Leo. But we also have the Sun opposing Saturn right now, which I think is probably coming through most likely as just exhaustion, right? Like I kind of felt the wind go out of my sails yesterday, and checked in with folks around me, and a lot of people were just having that deep sense of being tired. And when Saturn comes into contact with our vital life force, the Sun, it tends to be kind of depressing or exhausting. Another thing we have going on right now is that not only is Mercury retrograde, but it is conjunct Mars. And so when Mars and Mercury are conjunct in a fixed sign, it can be a lot of really like stuck, feisty, or angry energy. And the first of these conjunctions between Mars and Mercury happened back around, I think it was June 18th. So you can kind of like map your life to see if anything specific was going on there that is relevant. But it can also just be a time of kind of having, what you would call an overreaction to something, or energy that's kind of like looking for a vent. So like a small thing happens and you get really just like irate or angry over it. And so it's just a way to say the astrology this week is kind of intense. We're still in an eclipse window, so it's that whole July feeling of like, all right, we're kind of in the thick of things here, in the crucible, if you will. So with Mercury retrograde, it just started yesterday in Leo, and it's going to move back into Cancer, and I will try to do a follow-up one of these once it moves back into Cancer. And so as Mercury retrogrades are all about reviewing and rethinking and revising, and in case of the fire signs in particular, they're about revisioning or reimagining. I thought it would be nice to kind of take a little walk down Leo lane here. And Leo is the archetype of creative self-actualization. So what does that mean in real terms or in translation? And so if you think of astrology as a developmental wheel, starting with Aries, then to Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo is the first point in our development where we have established an I, right? We've established an identity. That's what happens in Cancer. And so Leo is the energy of expressing that identity. It's where and how we show our particular creative spin on things. So there are several signs in the zodiac that have to do with the masks we wear or performance, right? Libra and Pisces are also signs that have to do with those things. In Leo, that performance has to do with the idea of persona. So persona in and of its own sake, rather than for a relating mechanism, as we do in Libra, or glamoring or illusioning, as we do in Pisces. And so because Leo has to do with uniqueness and authenticity, it also has to do with where we have wounds around feeling recognized, our sense of recognition, which brings validation. And so Leo in its narcissistic shadow has to do with where we inflate in order to hide our wounds or cover our wounds as a protective mechanism, right? So we inflate our persona. It kind of fills in the space where a wound is. And so we latch on to an identity in order to escape the pain of feeling unloved or unwanted or unworthy, unvalidated, unrecognized. And so those are the kinds of themes that we can be reviewing right now. So like what childhood wounds get in the way of my creative self-expression, or even my, authentic self-expression. But I think that what's really up this week with Mercury conjunct Mars is it's an opportunity to get a better understanding for our relationship with anger. And particularly how we express anger, how anger feels, and how we can use anger too. And so, I think that anger is a really good one just in general because In our society, we don't really know what to do with it, right? We know about like anger management, right? Like you're not supposed to have anger, you're supposed to manage it. And I think that for many of us, it's more about expressing it and being in our anger while claiming it as our own and not causing harm to others, so not venting it or jabbing it out. But with this energy in Leo, it's also about not getting stuck in it, right? But anger is not the only keyword for the fire signs. And another word that I think is coming up right now a lot for me when I think about these things is bravery, right? Like Aries and Leo are very much about bravery, the courage to exist in Aries, and then the bravery it takes to express ourselves in Leo. And so it might be worth it to just review, what is your relationship to bravery? And in particular, how do you show up in the face of what's going on in the world today? How do you cultivate the bravery to be there, to step out of discomfort? And so then that begs the questions that are going to be coming up a little bit more, given that it's a Cancerian eclipse season, and given that Mercury retrograde is going to go back into Cancer, which is about hiding. And so how do you hide? And then bringing in the Capricorn themes, where do you feel guilt? How do you bypass? How do you repress? Right? And so how can you acknowledge all these things about yourself and love yourself through them, especially the ones that feel a little bit icky or repulsive? Because another thing that's coming up as we're dealing with this energy amidst the backdrop of so many planets in Capricorn is the idea of punishment. Right? How can you love yourself through these things rather than punish yourself? And this is all relevant because fear of punishment is a huge control factor in our society and our cultural conditioning. And so then the other thing I just wanted to touch on really briefly with this Mercury retrograde, that this beginning part of it here, is that because of its relationship to creativity, Leo also has a lot to do with lust, desire, and sex, right? So sex being kind of like the ultimate act of creation, potentially, if you want it to go there. So this time can have you reviewing those themes as well. And those, can link into those themes of punishment and guilt and shame and all of that too. But in particular here, we're looking at how do you channel your sexual energy? And that doesn't have to be into sex, although it can be. But sexual energy, again, and creative energy are really linked together in that creative self-actualization process. So, where does that sexual energy get stuck? How does it feel when that happens? How does it deplete you or revive you? So hopefully that's helpful, and hopefully I will be checking in again with you as the retrograde progresses through the month.